Well, hello my friends, it's Shawn Petite and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Look at this beautiful piece. Here are the supplies that we'll be using today. So I'm starting today's project on a 12 by 12 MDF board, and I'm using some collage packs, the vintage maps, vintage wallpapers 6, and the ledger paper collage pack. Those will all be available to you on sale this week. So you can grab those if you are interested in using them in your project. I'm putting all of the papers down with some Liquitex matte medium, and I put the papers down with and the background papers are just to get me started, and I'll explain a little bit more about it at the end of the video, but they're just to kind of get some papers down first, and then I can kind of move forward. But I needed to get something down. I know a lot of them were going to get covered up, and that's okay. That's how the process works. But the bits and pieces that show through are just fantastic. So I just needed to get some papers down to get my sketch going and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm doing. I'm getting everything down. This is the vintage map, and then the ledgers are at the bottom. So I've sketched out my landscape, and I just used a photo of something that I pulled off the internet, and I just kind of sketched that out with a soft pastel just to kind of get an idea. It wasn't exactly like the picture, but I needed that reference to kind of get some peaks and valleys in the hills and to kind of see where maybe the different layers would intersect and that kind of thing. So now I am taking my acrylic paints, and I'm using a variety. I'm using Lucas acrylic paints. I'm using Golden's Payne's Gray because Golden's Payne's Gray is different than others, and it's got a truer kind of gray blue color, and then some beige Liquitex or beige Lucas acrylic, and I didn't use titanium white, I only used beige, and some gray and some Payne's Gray to just kind of get some cloudy sky. And I'm really making sure, and I added some raw umber in there too to kind of dirty it up a little bit. But I am making sure to leave some areas that are really highlighted and light so that it represents the sun. I did throw in a little bit of yellow ochre to give kind of a warm feel of where the sun might be setting, that kind of thing. And you can kind of see that in the picture next to me, that kind of bright area where the sun may be peeking through the clouds or setting, that kind of thing. And then I'm using simple strokes and then some of my finger strokes as well to kind of get maybe some kind of cloudy, fluffy kind of feel up at the top there. But just kind of mixing all of those colors together to get some sky. All of the supplies will be listed on the blog, and the link to the blog is down below in the YouTube description box. So now that I've got my sky in, I am going to make my mountains. And in the picture you can see how dark those mountains are. And they're almost blue. And so I took Payne's Gray and added a tiny bit of like an olive green to get this really, really dark, kind of greenish gray color. And I wanted that little bit of green in there because there was green on the mountains and there'll be green in the hills. And so I just mixed those two together and just kind of followed along my lines, making some areas darker and some areas lighter, but not too specific on the colors, you know, making sure that I have some areas darker where the mountains kind of intersect. But then I will add my highlights and everything with my soft pastels. So now I'm going to add my paper, and I've chosen papers that have the colors that I'm trying to go with, not 100%. And I took my papers and just kind of tore them roughly because some of that unexpected edges really give a natural effect to that kind of mountainscape. And so I do have intersecting pieces like you would naturally see in the mountains. And I did kind of tear some of that paper back because the paper was fairly flat across the top. And you can see here I'm like, oh, I need to kind of bring that down just a tiny bit. And so I did, just to kind of give that more of a V in the landscape. So now I've taken some olive green with a little bit of raw umber to kind of dirty it up. And I'm going over the top of it, not a lot, because I really want that green color of the vintage wallpaper was really quite perfect. But I did want some painted variations in there. So I did just a tiny bit of that. And now I've got this wallpaper, although it looks kind of beige, it's got a really green tint to it. And so I thought it would be perfect for the lighter areas of my landscape. And I did want some of that other paper, the map, and to kind of show through. So I let some of that peek out, and then I'll kind of go back over it with my paint. And this is a straight out of the bottle color from Americana. It's called Celery. And then I will add a little bit of light to it and a little bit of raw umber again to kind of grungy it up. But it was a perfect color for this piece. And I do paint quite a bit on this section only because I really wanted kind of that variation of color. And again, I will add more to it with my soft pastels. But I was trying to be as light as I possibly could so that pattern and the other papers would show through. But there's a lot that's going to be going on that bottom section. So I wanted to make sure that it stood out or that it was not too distracting, so that when I did add the additional parts to the piece that you could still see the paper and yet it allowed for a great focal point as well. So the colors are very, very simple with this initial layer. I didn't do a lot of mixing or anything like that. The highlights come with the soft pastel. So this is that mixture of the Payne's gray and the olive green, really dark, and yet, and you can see that Payne's gray really coming out against that green. It's just beautiful. And I'm trying to be as simple as possible. I do my stenciling, and my stencils are always my guide because it allows me to create quickly and just add a few brush strokes to really make it feel painterly. So I did that dark color, and then I'm coming back in with some watered down olive green and some of that celery color just to add some highlights and lowlights, but not doing a whole lot, really trying to keep it as simple as possible. Adding some dots in the background to represent some trees. I wanted it to be really loose and not to look exactly like trees, but really kind of shadowy, because the focal point is what we're focusing on. And so a lot of times when you look at a picture and you've got something that's close up, the background's somewhat blurry, not completely in focus, and that's kind of what I was going for. So this is the trees stencil, and what I like about this stencil and all the stencils is I can use all of it or part of it. So you can see that in the smaller trees, I only used the top portion of some of those little tiny trees, and you can really make them work exactly how you want them to. And so here I'm coming back in again with my variety of colors. And so for the trees that are closer, they're a little more green. And that's for perspective. So the closer you get, the truer your colors get when you look at a photo. And then the farther away they are, the more shadowy they are. So that's why the trees in the back are darker. And so I'm adding more olive green and more lighter celery color to these trees because they're closer in the picture. I'm adding my trunks and different things like that, and then of course I'll come back in with my charcoal pencil and soft pastels to add even more detail. Now I got this stencil out because I thought those circles would be perfect for flowers. And so I stenciled them down with a variety of colors, and when I pulled it up, I just didn't like it. So I was like, nope. So I wiped them back. This stencil will still be on sale for you, even though I didn't actually use it. But it was looking too graphic for the way the piece was going. And we have to always be willing to pivot in our ideas when we're creating as we go, because things progress and each layer kind of tells us where we're going. And so I wanted it to be more natural and more playful instead of more graphic. And so I just went with circles, just a bunch of dots and circles. And I used a rose color, an orange color, and a magenta color in the Lucas paints. Then I mixed it with some beige to give it some highlights and some lowlights, and just dotted my flowers all over the place. So this is the pine cone stencil, and I'm using raw umber as my base, and with a tiny bit of green in there. And I don't get real detailed with the stenciling part because, again, it is my guide. And so I have that base, and the base always acts as a filler. And then I can come back in with my brush strokes, with my olive green, with some Payne's gray, and just really have fun and add some pine needles and darken in the branches and that kind of thing with my brush strokes. But having that initial layer helps me, one, see where I want it to go, and to add filler to make it look full, and to just really add to what you're working on. And so you can see here I'm just darkening in the branches and making them thicker, fuller, connecting all the parts together, and then just adding a little bit of that Payne's gray on some of the darker undercolors and some of the celery on the lighter colors that might be up towards the light a little bit more. But really just adding lots of different brush strokes with those colors to just kind of fill it in just a tiny bit. So this piece, I'll explain at the end, has a lot of meaning and was a surprise. The inspiration was a surprise this week, and I love it when that happens. I positively love it. And so I hope you stick around for the conversation at the end. It's a good one, a needed one for me. I know that for sure. And so, yeah, the inspiration was a quote, and it didn't end up on the piece, but it will be on the back of the original. And I'll also share that quote with you at the end. So this is the bird's nest, and I'm using raw umber again as my base for my stenciling. And I just love this stencil. It's so fun. So now I'm going to add all of my shading, and I'm just going to go around all of the edges, all of the intersections, all of the layers, and this is a General's General's charcoal pencil in extra soft, and I'll be mixing in my soft pastels as I shade as well. But basically right now I'm just going to go over all of the edges and just add my wonderful charcoal shading. I'll use my charcoal pencil to add some of the shading underneath the trees and to add to the stems and different things like that. Just touches here and there, but really that charcoal really separates all of those layers and adds depth and dimension. So now that I've got almost all of my shading done, I'll start coming back in with my soft pastels. And the soft pastels are going to add all of the pop, all the character, all of those kinds of things. Adding again to my bird's nest, and here I'm bringing in a brown soft pastel to kind of go around the outline of the bird's nest stencil, and it adds that color and shading to really fill in that nest. Super simple and super easy, but the effect is gorgeous. Soft pastels are a wonderful way to play with color, add depth, dimension without any risk, because if you don't like it, you can wipe it up. So I'm going to start adding marks and smushes and different things like that. So this is just a kind of a regular green, kind of a gold green. And I was looking for contrasting colors because that's going to add some of the dimension that I'm looking for. You can see how I've added some of the hills in the background. I'm adding the grasses. I'll do that within each layer, each highlight. But that green down with the flowers really helps all of that blend in together. And because I'm using so much soft pastels and water-soluble products like the charcoal and the pastels, make sure to seal this with a fixative. And for this one I used Krylon because it's stronger, and then I will use a spray seal, and then I can go back over it and coat it with another sealer. But because this has so much soft pastels, it's best to use the stronger stuff instead of Spectrafix to fix and seal your piece. So I'm just going to continue to add my shading. You can see I'm using the darks. I have dark sides and light sides to my mountains. I have light sides in the hills and the valleys, some browns in some of the crevices, and where there might naturally be some shading in those intersection of the hills. And that's about it, my friends. I'll shade around the edge, and super easy, super simple, but great meaning and lots of fun with collage. And so I hope you stick around for the conversation at the end. If you enjoyed today's project, subscribe and like and share. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Well, hello my loves, and happy Sunday to you. I hope your Sunday is going well. Look at this bit of peace and calm and grace and all the good things. I just love this. Love. I love how it turned out. I had a picture of an idea, and it's pretty close to what I wanted, and I'm just thrilled. There were some things that got left out. There were some things that originally I had in the plan, and I'll kind of talk you through that, and I talked through that a little bit throughout the video. But originally I had wanted the words to kind of be meandering down here, but the quote that I had for the inspiration of this piece is very big and very long, and it just didn't fit, and it took away. I'm just loving this the way that it is, and it took away. I was going to put a bird, and again I really wanted to kind of go with the quote and how it was the feeling of the quote. And I think if I end up selling this piece, this piece will be in the shop, I'm going to put the quote on the back because it's so crucial to this piece, and same with the prints as well. So but I want to answer or say this right off the bat, because I know I'm going to get comments, because I get comments about this all the time, is why put down papers like there were the map papers in the background if I'm just going to cover them up. But all of that is part of the process. If I overanalyzed or over-planned, I would never create. And part of the process of creating is to just start and be willing to let go of the background to keep moving forward. And one step leads to the next step. And so I put the original papers down because I wanted to get my sketch outlined, and I wasn't exactly sure where everything was going to go. So I put the original papers down knowing that maybe not everyone would show up, or maybe I would use the maps as part of the lighter area. And you just have to start and let go of the background to create the final piece. And so the map here, that world map that has the outlines, that looks like, I hope you can see it, it looks like that's where the sun, that's like the rays of the sun. It is perfect. And so I went with that and really created that light right there. The green vintage wallpaper, you can see the pattern here. Same with the other green vintage wallpaper. There were still some maps showing down here, and that's peeking through. It's all there, and yet it's not there. And so it's all part of that creative process, and each time you take a step, whether it ends up in the piece or not, it leads you to your next creative process or color or inspiration or whatever it might be. So don't be afraid to let go of your background. And like I said, there were things that I was going to put in here. I originally wasn't going to put Grace in here. I was going to have a bird in here. And because of the quote and because how it was really feeling, it feels so peaceful. Like it feels Grace, like it feels like Grace. And I love that. And I just did not want to take away from that. So I went over everything that I used throughout the video. So let me see, do I have anything else? Oh, I have a couple things that I want to say. We finished up the coloring book series this week, but you can always go back and watch them. I'm going to have a whole list of all the different series that we've done in case you've missed them, so that you can go back and watch them and have things to do during your quarantine time if you're still staying at home. I know a lot of people are for another month or so. Anyway, so that'll be on the blog, in the Sunday blog, as well as the email if you're a subscriber. Collage packs that I used were Vintage Maps, Vintage Wallpaper 6, and those will be listed, and those will be on sale this week, as well as the stencils that I used. And so I got out my scribble marks to do the flowers. I thought that would be kind of a fun abstract, and I was going to have this a little bit more abstract, but as I got painting, it just kind of fell into place in its own way, in its own softness. So that didn't work, so I just went to hand painting. So I used the pine cone stencil for my branches. And here's another thing I'll get a question about for sure, is why stencil when you can paint, when you're painting over it so much? Because that stencil is your guide. All that stencil mark is in the background, and then when I add paint to it, same with the bird's nest or scribbles or shading, it gives it depth. It gives it another layer of color. Same with the trees. It's super quick and super easy. I don't have to think about it. The shape is already there, and then I can add some additional colors and it gives it depth. So I use the pine cone stencil for the branches, the bird's nest stencil for the bird's nest, the trees 2 stencil, where did I do with it? Trees 2 stencil, and then I started with the scribble marks. This is one of my favorite scribble marks stencil, but it just didn't work. So I went with just hand painting it. And those stencils will be on sale this week. And collage packs. Okay, the other thing is earlier, no, last year. See, who knows? I don't even know what day it is. How can I even think about this year or last year? Last year I participated in Art Bundle for Good. It is 64 artists with over $4,000 worth of courses put together. 2 of my courses, Transparent Layers and The Magic of Tissue Paper, I think, I don't remember, are part of that bundle. Well, they are doing a re-release of it, which I think is perfect timing for right now. And when you see this video, it will be on sale. I think it'll either be the day that you see this video or Monday the 9th. You guys, I'm so sorry. My dates are bad. It'll be in the blog post and I'll have it listed. But the Art Bundle for Good sale will be going on, and you can get that. I mean, I am purchasing it because the
the artists and everything that's in it is just phenomenal. And it has all different kinds of mediums, pencil drawing, pastels, oils, all different kinds for, I think it's $90, something like that. Super, super cheap for all of those courses, all those artists, some of my favorite artists. So I'll have the information again in the blog post for this Sunday, and then it'll also be in the email as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there really quick. I know, you know, we'd kind of gone back and forth, like if they were going to release it or not because of the time, and really I think it's if you can afford it, and I know not everybody can, and you know I want to be sensitive to that, but if you can, it's a great option right now for some distraction and some things to do during your quarantine time, your stay-at-home time. So, all right, that is that. I think I covered everything. All right, so for the inspiration for this piece, so I have been struggling, and I've shared that last week, just having energy and feeling motivated and those kinds of things, just having fresh ideas and feeling inspired, and it's just one of those things. I ebb and flow through that all the time. With the way things are right now, sometimes I think that's hurting a lot of artists, and I wouldn't say hurting. It's a struggle sometimes when you're feeling so many feelings and different things and not knowing how to proceed and where to go and what you're doing and all those kinds of things. Just in general, creating art and finding inspiration is really difficult. So I'm kind of in that place, and I'm feeling my way out of it now, and the best thing to do for that is to just keep creating, whether it's crap or not, but just keep creating, and then allow yourself grace. And so I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm like, oh Lord, please give me some inspiration. What am I needing? What am I feeling? I always go back to that when I'm looking for something to paint. What do I need? Where am I at? And I'm like, gosh, I just need some grace for myself, because I'm really, really hard on myself. And I think we all are to some extent. And so on my bulletin board above my desk, that's been on my bulletin board for probably 7 years, all I saw was this. I saw this little bit, and it says Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I pulled it off, and you can see the holes that it's been pushed into the bulletin board. And this has seriously been on my bulletin board for ages. And this quote is from fragrance box from Philosophy, and I don't even know if they're still around. I bet they are, but it was called Amazing Grace, the fragrance, and that's part of the reason why I bought it. But I started reading the quote by Philosophy, and I teared up, and then I read it to the staff, and everyone's like, I got goosebumps. I'm like, all right, that is it. So let me read it to you now. How you climb up the mountain is just as important as how you get down the mountain. And so it is with life, which for many of us becomes one big, gigantic test, followed by one big, gigantic lesson. In the end, it all comes down to one word: grace. It's how you accept winning and losing, good luck and bad luck, the darkness and the light. Grace. I'm telling you, that is never truer than right now in all of our lives. The darkness and the light. There is both. There is light and there is dark. There's good and there's bad. There's the up climb and there's the down. And how we handle it for ourselves, not even talking about everyone else around us, but for ourselves, is difficult. I don't give myself much grace at all. I'm like, keep pushing, keep creating, keep going, keep doing more, whatever. Put more content out, help others, help. And that's all great. It's all wonderful. And you are probably doing the same, helping others, trying to make sure everybody's okay, fixing dinners, all the things, I don't know. But it is okay to allow grace over you on you in your soul, grace. And I know I keep talking about it, and I guess I keep talking about it because I need it. But we're so hard on ourselves sometimes. And then what happens is when we're hard on ourselves, we're hard on everybody else. I know that's true for me. When I'm unsettled and I'm not giving myself some grace and permission to relax, permission to feel crappy, permission to feel like I want to stay in bed all day, permission to feel like this whole pandemic sucks. I mean, we're all trying to, and I am too, and we need to stay upbeat and positive and those kinds of things, but we also need to allow ourselves some grace to just be. And so that is this piece. The nest is my landing place. The nest is my soft spot to land in a world where I've just climbed up a mountain and now I'm on my way back down and I'm tired. And I need some rest. I need to get to the place where I can land and rest. And so I know a lot of you commented last week about how you could tell how tired I was because I yawned in the middle of my video, and I was going to edit that out. And I thought, no, it's real life. It's the deal. It's the real deal. And I try to be as honest as I possibly can with feelings and emotions and different things like that, because I think all of that helps us in our creative process, helps us in our own space and spiritual and physical and emotional work, and it helps us in our community of people that we serve regularly, whether it's our family, our spouse, our kids, our churches, our neighborhoods, our whatever. All of that needs some grace. You need grace. And just because, and this is the hard part for me, just because I don't want to get up and clean the house or creating, I can usually always find some strength to create because that's just my safe place. But all the other stuff, I just don't want to, I just want to stay in bed. That's okay. Grace. Don't judge yourself for that. All right, my loves, keep going, keep doing what you're doing. We're getting through this together, and we are going to be better and stronger and all more creative. All the workshops we're taking and all the things that we're learning while we're at home. Oh boy, are we going to be empowered and strong. And we also will be covered with grace. All right, my loves, have a wonderful Sunday, and always, always know that you are loved.